Hey, church family, thanks so much for joining us this morning for our daily devotional. So glad that you have chosen to join us. I hope that you've been with us all week this week as we have continued to talk about the endurance that we find in when our hope is placed in Christ. When I think about endurance, a lot of times I think about runners. If you see me, you know I don't exactly look like a runner. There was a time when I ran a little bit more for sure than I do now, but one thing that I know from that time in my life is that when you're preparing to run a race, you don't prepare to run a race by sitting on the couch eating Cheetos, right? You have to actually go out and run, and each day leading up to that race, and the months or even the year ahead of time leading up to that race, you have to run a little bit further and a little bit harder and a little bit further and a little bit harder. And you're constantly, little bit by little bit, pushing yourself to go further than you have before. And what happens is your body builds up endurance. I'm not telling you anything that you don't already know. You know this already. Your body builds up that endurance so that on race day, when you have to actually compete, when the time has come for you to prove what you can do, your endurance is built up and you can compete at a high level, and your chance of winning is better. But like I said, if you train by sitting on the couch eating Cheetos, you may not even finish the race, right? Your endurance will not be where it's meant to be. And that is it's a good picture as we look here in Romans chapter 5, starting in verse 4, kind of picking up where Brother Brent has left off earlier this week. Paul writes, "Endurance produces proven character, and proven character produces hope." And so what Paul is just trying to express to his readers here, to the people here in Rome, is that our character is proof of the hope that we have in Christ. And our character doesn't come just by the snap of a finger. Good character, strong Christlike integrity doesn't just happen. It's something that we have to work towards as believers. We work towards it in prayer. We work towards it in obedience to Him as we read His Word, and we find in His Word that He calls us to do things. When He calls us to do those things, we become obedient to Him. We become submissive to Him. And what Paul's saying is, hey, in time, you're going to face a trial. In time, you're going to face a time when it's time to compete, right? When a hard time comes, and how you respond, it shows who you are. It shows whether you have endurance. Your character proves that. So sometimes when we face hard times, we find ourselves resorting back to who we were before Christ, resorting back to those sinful ways. And what happens is we're just showing, hey man, our character isn't quite there yet. Our integrity isn't quite there yet. We have not built up the endurance. And typically, if we haven't built up the endurance, that's on us for not trying to do that, for not pursuing righteousness and pursuing holiness and finding ourselves in obedience to God. But for some of us, for many of us, I hope eventually for all of us, that when those times come, when the difficult times come, and we find ourselves faced with these trials, this time to compete, my hope is that we have built up our endurance, that leading up to that moment, we have been pursuing Christ with all that we have. And so what happens is we have Christ-like character in that moment. Our integrity is strong. And so even though it may be difficult, we don't resort back to who we were before Christ. Instead, we lean in on Christ. And we lean in on Him because we know He has already defeated whatever it is that we're facing. He has defeated sin and death. What else is there left to fear, right? We have nothing else to fear because He has defeated everything that is against us. Any enemy, any foe that we have, Christ has defeated it. But we have to rely on Him. We have to trust in Him, put our faith in Him. And sometimes that may mean that our response is not what we would personally do. But as long as our response is what Christ would call us to do, we are continuing to affirm that character and affirm that integrity. And once again, that gives us hope, and it proves the hope that we have in Christ. So a couple of questions that our author gives us. The first one, how does your character provide proof for the change God has made in you? And I would encourage you to answer that question, not with the answer of kind of what we just said, but you personally. How does your personal character prove that God has made a change in you? And does your personal character prove to the world around you that God has made a change in you? And then our second question, Why are you confident you'll share eternity with Jesus? And this question is not meant to doubt your salvation. Instead, this question is just meant for you to wrestle with your salvation. Not that you would wonder if you have it, but that you would just face the fact of what Christ has done in your life and allow that to work in you, and once again build that endurance and hopefully build that character and that integrity so that we can show the world who Christ is and what all he's done for us. And so as you're working through these questions, as I hope that you are growing in Christ-like character and integrity as you seek him and his word, we want you to know that we're praying for you and we love you.